Sekeres and Price for Monday, December 15th, 2025, a presentation of Bet365. We're coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio here at the historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Matt Sekeres alongside Jeff Paterson, sitting in for a vacationing Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things in the producer's booth. Good to see you back. Thank you for sitting in for Blake again today. It's his birthday. His wife had plans for him.
What a weekend to be away.
We will tease him mercilessly when he returns on Wednesday.
I think he was in the same spot I was when the Canucks traded Bo Horvat, as I recall. I was down in the desert somewhere.
Yeah. Well, when we signed off of the regular show here on Friday, Jeff, mentioned I was going to the ABCOM Christmas luncheon, which tends to be, a boozy affair with all the media buyers, sellers, agencies, sales folks in the media game across the city. I had picked up my phone and thought, okay, I'm going to join some friends who were finding a new spot, about to call the Uber, and lo and behold, I saw the news. Was there any single part of you, JPat, that thought a Quinn Hughes trade could go down this weekend?
No. In fact, on Friday, I said I didn't think it would happen before the Christmas break, the holiday freeze. I figured that they were still in the information gathering stage. We've since learned some of the timeline and the way things have shaken down here. But no, when I left the studio on Friday, I thought I was free and clear until the Sunday face-off, the early start in New Jersey, and certainly was not anticipating getting roped into an emergency pod and breaking down one of one of the biggest trades in franchise history.
Well, before we get into our daily poll question, saw a bunch of this on the weekend. Of course, we talked a lot about this prior to Friday. Bigger than the Pavel Bure trade in January of 1999. Now, that had altogether far more NHL roster pieces and even, in fact, more picks going back and forward. But do you think this one is bigger?
I think living in the social media age and the reaction and the fact that so many people now have an outlet for their voice, that it takes on a larger scope in that way. But in terms of for the team, I mean, we're talking about, at that point, the most exciting player to ever suit up for the Vancouver Canucks and an absolute game breaker. I mean, I put them on par. It's funny. I look at the Cam Neely trade that we still talk about all these years later. Obviously, Brian Bourke wheeling and dealing on the draft floor in the spring of 1999 to get the picks that turned into Daniel and Henrik Sedin, or at least get the second pick that allowed them to draft the Twins, and Roberto Luongo coming to Vancouver on the eve of the 2006 draft. I think those are probably the biggest trades. Pat Quinn pulled off a couple that truly revved up that 94 team.
Yep.
But when we're talking star power and like breathtaking, jaw-dropping, stopping the league in its tracks.
Absolutely, it stopped the league.
Then I think you're looking at Pavel and you're looking at Quinn the other day.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, it was January 17th, 1999. Pavel Bure, Brad Ferentz, Brett Hedican, and a third-round pick to Florida for Mike Brown, Dave Gagne, Ed Jovanovski, Kevin Weeks, and a first-round pick that turned into Nathan Smith. The parallels here go beyond that, too. Of course, Bure wandered out, had a bit of a tortured history with Canucks management. But even the ties that bind go deeper than that, because Ed Jovanovski was the first-round pick. He's first overall. Dave Gagne was a first-round pick. Mike Brown, who never really amounted to much, and this was not the second Mike Brown who played for the Canucks years later in the AV Nonis era.
This was the Mike Brown that at the time was playing for the Kamloops Blazers. And Matt, I was in Regina the day of this trade. And obviously the Mike Brown angle, I had access to Mike Brown, so I remember talking to him moments after the deal came down. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those trades where you remember where you were.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, I was
a
in the
young
press box in Regina.
I was a young reporter in the Ottawa Sun newsroom. The trade went down, and it stopped the sports department. Everybody was looking at the television, listening to the details, and trying to compute that one. So it was three players who were first-round picks and a first-round pick. Poor Kevin Weeks was just a second-round pick. It was a 5-piece haul for the Vancouver Canucks, but they gave up 4 pieces. I mean, Brad Ferentz was a good player. Brad Edigan were good players as well.
Brad Ferentz was the 10th overall
pick. So I mean, there was quality going both ways. If you wanted to argue the Bure trade was bigger because of all of those factors, I hear you. But wow, the Quinn Hughes trade, amongst the biggest, at the very least, if not the single biggest in Canucks history. And this management group, in and of its own right, Jeff, have pulled off some earth-shaking trades, whether it was Horvat to the Islanders and then Roenick coming from Detroit a couple of weeks later, whether it was JT Miller to the Rangers, and later that night, the Marcus Pettersson trade coming this way. We're asking you on the daily poll question, have you gotten over the Quinn Hughes trade? You can vote yes, you can vote no, you can vote never. And I think what has materialized here over the course of the weekend, JPat, is, look, I think Canucks fans are shocked at the timing of the deal, as we all were. And I say that because even while smoke was picking up last week, you'll remember last year, folks, there was smoke around JT Miller for the better part of 2 months before that deal was executed. I think a lot of people, and myself included, I was guilty of this, turned out to be wrong, felt like the Canucks were going to have trouble coming to grips with this. They have kicked many cans down the road. There's all these home games to sell, season ticket money to bring in. So I thought in that regard, they would probably wait until March, also give themselves a little bit more runway to try and maybe get back into this season. So I was stunned by the timing, as I think a lot of you were. I do think for the most part, Canucks fans understood that a Quinn Hughes trade was coming and had to be made. And for the most part, I think most Canucks fans do like the return here and thought the Vancouver Canucks did well. We asked on our daily poll question for that emergency pod Friday night, how do you feel about the return on Quinn Hughes? Like, dislike, still processing. Like got 35% of the vote. It more than doubled up. The 16% who said they disliked, although 49% said they were still processing, and I get that. But I do think the other thing that is crystal clear is that there are a lot of Canucks fans upset that it came to this, Jeff, that the day came where you were trading out one of, if not the single best player to wear the team's jersey.
Yeah, that's my sense. People filling my timeline, just associates and buddies of mine, friends that have been longtime Canuck fans, as they start to wrap their head around the fact that Quinn's no longer here, and they look at what the Canucks got in return, and they got a chance to see them on the ice against the Devils on Sunday, people are like, all right, given the circumstances, I think the return is probably about as good as they could have done, so I don't mind the trade. I hate the reasons behind the trade. And I don't think that's going to change for quite some time.
No, I don't think you're wrong there. Now, Quinn Hughes will not play in Vancouver this season. The Wild have already played here once. That was their only visit. The Canucks do head into the Twin Cities to face the Wild on April 2nd, and so we'll see how that goes. But a return game will have to wait until next year. Quinn Hughes met the media last night after his first game with the Minnesota Wild, where he scores a goal and is named the game's first star. Let's hear from the Canucks' former captain. And boy, is that an odd phrase to articulate. The Canucks' former captain on the fact that talks even started this summer.
I mean, there was, some talks a little bit this summer, and, I love the guys there, and some of those guys are my best friends, and you want to be successful, and so came into the year open-minded, and wanted to make it work, and obviously wanted to have a great year, but just think with the injuries and the direction it was going, it wasn't happening, and I think Jim knew where my head was at a little bit, and we got to talking, or Jim and Pat got to talking, and a couple weeks ago, and it kind of went from there.
So the timeline is important here, and let's lay it out. Later in the program, we're going to talk that Rutherford said he had a feeling about 18 months ago. So when he articulated in April, Jeff, that the day will come when Quinn may come where Quinn wants to play with his brothers, that seemingly now came from a knowing place. Also, that talks happened this summer. Tells us that the Vancouver Canucks were prepared to move on this file for some time. Do you believe Quinn when he said he came into the year with an open mind, or do you think the die was cast previous to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a ton of respect for Quinn Hughes, the player, and have always had respect for Quinn Hughes, the person. Now, knowing what we know and hearing from him in the aftermath, didn't necessarily love the pouting his way out of town act that he pulled here for the last little bit.
And a lot of Canucks fans are upset about that.
Like, when you think of the response that he gave Kevin Chirac in that CTV clip, really the last time that question was put to him about staying here long term, head down, just kind of mumbling, whatever.
Leaned on the CBA, I can't sign until July
yesterday
anyways.
In Minnesota, magically full sentences again, bright-eyed, wearing a funny hat, and mugging for photos after the game, all of that.
Yeah.
That rings a little hollow then the last couple of weeks here.
I think with the passage of time, Jeff, Quinn will realize that there was a better and classier way to go about this. Frankly, should have taken a page from Bo Horvat. You remember Horvat and Taka telling us about that first meeting he had with Bo Horvat, who said, look, I'm your captain, I'm your guy, whatever you need. I'm not sure how long I'll be here, but whatever you need in the interim. And Bo, of course, was so classy on his way out when everybody suspected there very well could be a divorce here. Now, some Canucks fans will say maybe not as classy when he got to the island and told us that for free. But yeah, there was a little bit of pout here. Immaturity did shine through with Quinn Hughes. People talked about the body language, talked about, just flat quitting on some shifts. Like, we saw some things from Quinn Hughes on the ice this year that we had never seen before. It was, even the frustration. I mean, it was a page out of JT Miller's book. I think with the passage of time, he'll come to regret some of that. I would bet that he has got some making up to do with Canucks fans, and that he'll do so in his first media availability before he plays his first game here in Vancouver as a member, I was going to say of the Minnesota Wild, but maybe that's not even guaranteed, too. We'll see what he tells them.
But to your question
in
about,
July.
Do I take him at face value? I suppose I do, which then still leads to this unanswered question about, if he was open to staying here and it was about winning. He said, as the injuries hit and things kind of got sideways, that's when it became clear to him. So, this wasn't an American guy that was running for the border necessarily. This was a guy that was looking for a place that he could win because he didn't see a chance to win here in the short term and didn't want to stay around to figure out if he could win here in the long term. But that's the one unanswered piece in all of this is they never supported him with a winning lineup that gave him this vision that this could be the place. He was the captain. He would have been the guy that Gary Bettman, well, it may not have been Gary Bettman, but whoever, the commissioner, hands the Stanley Cup to. He had that opportunity to be the first captain in Vancouver Canuck history to hoist the Stanley Cup if, it's a big if, they had given him the component parts necessary.
God, that visual is a little bit painful right now. And as you said on Friday's emergency show, and look, a lot of Canucks fans are upset with Quinn Hughes right now. I get it. The Canucks failed Quinn more than Quinn failed the Canucks. I mean, he was a spectacular player who was a massive factor in the little success that they did have with him here under team auspices. He said last night that he felt it was time and that Jim Rutherford did too. Apparently, Rutherford engaged his agent, Pat Brisson, about places he'd be happy and would want to play, despite the fact he had no trade protection and could have gone anywhere. We heard that Hughes preferred going to the Eastern Conference. Well, he didn't get that wish. He's still in the Western Conference, albeit...
the Eastern outpost of the Western Conference.
One state over from where he spent summer and where he spent some time at the University of Michigan. Here's the other thing that I think struck some Canucks fans was jarring. Quinn said he knew Thursday against the Sabres was likely his last game as a Canuck. Take a listen.
I had a good idea that, it was potentially my last game there in Rogers on Thursday. And then kind of had a good idea Friday morning. Wanted to go to New York, just obviously you never know. And I was able to see my brothers and get dinner with some of my close friends on the team and see those guys. And I had some great memories there and some really good friendships, so it was obviously tough, but I honestly couldn't be more excited for this chapter.
What did you hear there?
Well, what I didn't hear was, I think it was a follow-up. He said his mom's already come into town and cleaned out his apartment. He is done with Vancouver. He was out east. Mom was coming in here and mopping up and getting rid of his place, so he's done. It goes back. Did
he own? Is there a condo for sale here, Jeb?
I don't know.
I hear there's some condos for sale in this town.
The fact that he's copping to knowing now that Thursday, and I actually thought he played as hard as he had in a while on Thursday against the Sabres, but just him knowing, again, when you think of the body language and some of the actual language in the weeks leading up, that does leave I understand, it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of many. We all will turn a page and move on at some point here, but it's still pretty damn raw in the aftermath. And then to see him that was jarring. To see him in a Wild uniform skating around on Sunday afternoon, it was a weird visual. I'm not going to lie. I watched a fair bit of that game. I saw him score. He did what Quinn Hughes does. He played 26 and a half minutes, although they were up by a ton, so they eased him off. He was headed for another 30-minute night, and he'll probably get there, but I think it was 26-55 in total, 3 shots, 6 attempts, and he scored a goal. So, he gave the Minnesota a huge reaction. He was named for a star, got a huge roar then. They're going to love him. He's an incredible hockey player.
I'll say this, that Ellen Hughes works quickly. We should all be so fortunate to have a mom like that in her mid-20s come and pack up her, although I guess he's not married, right?
Man, so she knew Thursday was his last game. she had warning. She may have been out here on Wednesday. Yeah. Who knows?
I tweeted this on Friday, and Mike's got the visual we'll bring up, and just saw all the comments about how difficult this was to read. Believe you me, it was difficult to type as well. Quinn Hughes' Canucks career concludes 489 games played. That includes the Stanley Cup playoffs. We always include the playoffs here on this show. I mean, those are the most important games.
Yep.
63 goals, 385 assists, 448 points. Norris Trophy, the first in Vancouver Canucks history, unequivocally the best defenseman in Canucks history. Has been a first-team NHL All-Star, was a member of the All-Rookie team in his first season, and arguably the best player in franchise history. He, at the very least, stands with the greats in Canucks lore. Blake and I had the discussion earlier in the year. You get any Vancouver Canuck during their peak, their prime, Mark Messier excluded. Who are you taking? I think a lot of people would say, I'll take Quinn Hughes over prime Bure. I'll take Quinn Hughes over prime Henrik or Daniel Sedin.
50 years of chasing to get a Quinn Hughes. And as it turns out, it was 7. I mean, it was fun to watch him in his shifts. I can't say it was 7 fun years overall.
But here's the thing.
There were some moments.
Well, so, here's the thing. So in terms of the poll question, I voted no. I'm not over it. I'm not over it because it's such a huge trade that I'm still processing. We also have to deal with it here professionally and will for many a day and week. So I'm not over it. I do think there will be a time, though, when I am over it. I didn't consider voting never on the poll, and for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned several times during this saga, that there is a world where the Vancouver Canucks make a Quinn Hughes trade and emerge as a better organization, a better franchise, a better team going forward. Blake had this point of view on Friday. You have added 3 roster players here, a defenseman who steps in immediately and power plays the quarterback, and I thought William looked pretty good power playing the quarterback last night. Now, We'll see if Buim can get to the level that Hughes has gotten to. That's a very, very big ask. They were so desperate for a center iceman of some sort of competency. Jeff and Marco Rossi, I think, showed us some of that yesterday in his Vancouver Canucks debut. It was the position that was holding them back all this season. And maybe they get something out of Liam Ogren here as well, not to mention that first-round pick. We had often talked about the Erik Karlsson trade, the Matt Duchene trade, even the Eric Lindros trade got slipped in at some point in terms of trading quality for quantity and emerging as the winner of that deal. So I think all of that is still possible. I also think that, most reviews on the return are pretty good from both Canucks fans, Wild fans, and neutral observers across the National Hockey League. So we'll see where it goes from here. The Canucks have more utility across three positions than they had because, for as great as Quinn Hughes was, Jeff, it's not like they did a ton of winning here. Like their power play was 15th in the NHL last year. I looked it up. Yep. It's their expected goals per game was in the bottom 5 of the NHL. So it's not like even with his greatness that they were achieving something that's going to be difficult to capture here in his absence.
No, and I mean, how many times did we talk about the fact that they all deferred to him way too much? It was always about getting the puck back to Quinn, especially on the power play. And yes, he had a brilliance to him and often made things happen, but a lot of times it's a team sport. One guy can't do it all on his own. And I mean, maybe it's not a surprise that they score on their first 2 power plays. Yeah, it is, because it was no Quinn and it was no Elias Pettersson. I mean, it was a patchwork first unit. Look, Zeev Buim's debut, 2 points. Let's be honest, a very fortunate bounce and a second assist.
Yes.
But way beyond that, it was the poise, it was the presence.
The rush on the goal was pretty darn good, Jeff.
And this guy, Matt, he turned 20 last week. Like, he just turned 20 years old, and that's the excitement, I guess, in all of this is he's the guy they need to pan out. And, wherever he levels up, if it's at Quinn's level, great. If it's 75% of Quinn, it would still be an incredible player. But he is the guy that they need to hit. They need help at center ice, and Marco Rossi was fine in his debut. Played 18 minutes. He won a bunch of faceoffs. He hit a post in the second period at one point. And Ogren's project and a prospect still. He's young. He's got size. He's got speed, but they have to develop him, and we'll see where it goes there.
Buim is one of 6 under-21 defensemen in the entire National Hockey League.
Yeah.
And many, as we discussed on the emergency pod on Friday, many will say he was the absolute steal of his draft, that somehow he fell to number 12, kind of like Quinn was the steal of his draft, right? Falling to number 7. So we'll unpack more on Zeev Buim, on Marco Rossi, and on Liam Ogren, not to mention this first-round pick in the days, weeks, and months to come, and including a little later in the show. Just tell me how you voted. Yes, no, or never.
No, I'm a no as well.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I will at some point
get to yes.
But
these are early hours.
No, it's still fresh. I mean, as you pointed out right off the top, they still have to play Quinn again. Like, it's all going to come flooding back on April 2nd and the days leading up to that. We'll see how it goes for both teams here. I mean, it's going to be fun to follow Quinn on a good team in Minnesota, and it is a good team that gets better adding him. And look, I know the Canucks beat New Jersey, and so I think it was important that they get a win. I don't want to spend too much time on the game itself, but I will say it allows people, the young guys come in. Buim helps out here. Rossi can feel like he contributed as well.
It's 3 under 25 roster players.
The veteran guys, all right, maybe these guys can play. Even with the win, they don't move out of the basement in the league standings. And they got outshot 21-7 over the final 2 periods. They were not good on Sunday. Thatcher Demko made some saves. They killed off 5-on-3 in the first period. They only scored 2 goals. Right? So the goal scoring issue remains for this team. But I think for one day it allows them all just to exhale in the midst of a pretty traumatic event of seeing your captain and a pretty popular guy in the locker room jettisoned. So I don't think this is going to spur them on to any kind of run. They haven't won back-to-back games since the middle of October here, and they're not going to win many games when they have 10 even-strength shots over 60 minutes. But they beat
Yeah,
the Devils.
and they did get a Last Supper with Quinn Hughes in the New York metropolitan area on Friday. He was on the team flight. He was with his teammates having a final meal. Kind of reminds of J.T. Miller last year and Hollyburn, all those Canucks gathering on the Friday before. Well, Miller thought he was being traded the next day. It wound up taking another week or so. And, there were some long faces, needless to say. Brock Besser's amongst them for losing, Philip Roenick among them for losing Quinn Hughes. And it was just Friday, Jeff, we were talking about how they doubled up the Buffalo Sabres in shots. So right back down to usual on the shot clock deficit. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, Aftermath. Where do the Canucks go from here? They finally have a direction. Do they have a destination? Or are more shortcuts to follow? I have the same question that so many of you Canucks fans have as well. Okay, you have lit the path to rebuild. Are you going to stay on that path all the way to Stanley Cup contention? Or will there be some forks in the road, like dealing one of these 2026 first-round picks? Needless to say, the market in mourning, given the departure of one of the best players in the history of the franchise. Shocked, jarring, angry that it got to this point. And all of that runs parallel to many saying, hey, like the return here of 3 roster players and the first-round pick to boot. I did come across this from our buddy Lachlan Irvin of Canucks Army. He says, I walked up to the plaza, this is Rogers Arena, and I noticed someone had left a little pot of flowers with a picture of Quinn at the base of the Roger Nielsen statue. Someone from the Canucks quickly came and took them away, reports Lachlan. And here's what that tells me, Jeff. They had security outside the building Friday, wondering if there would be any fan demonstrations after this one.
It tells me that we're taking a little step too far here. He got traded. He's not dead. We didn't need a shrine.
No memorial?
No. But sure, they're sensitive. They're sensitive to everything that is said and written about them and the way fans will respond and react. And, you know, there's a part of me that feels the timing was all calculated, that they're gone for 5 days or 5 games out east and then a holiday break. Like, I mean, we're not going to be around this hockey club for basically 2 weeks.
Yep.
And, you know, when the new guys arrive in town, they're going to be asked about the trade and impressions and all that. Like, that's how it works. But that's not going to happen until game day of the 27th, I think.
Yeah.
So there was a part of me as it all went down on forget the Friday afternoon news dump. Like, that's a thing of the past. In the 24-hour news cycle,
I know.
we jumped on with emergency pods
exactly.
and had huge numbers.
Like, somebody mentioned that to me and followed up with me. I said, look, like that is sort of a relic of media days gone by where, you know, you don't have 24-hour in access. Like, everybody knew of this trade within minutes or hours of it going down. So
and we did massive numbers on the emergency pod. Like, people were into it. It's just the world we live in.
People found time in their evening Friday through their weekend.
But the fact that it happened as the team was flying east and gone for the better part of 2 weeks, there's still a part of me that thinks there might have been some calculation to all of that.
Quinn addressed his departure on social media. Let's bring that up, Mike. Jeff, did this hit all the right notes for you? Many have said he didn't specifically name check Patrick Alvin in all of this.
Well, and that became a thing at the Instagram post, but then at the microphone yesterday post-game, again, talked about Jim Rutherford, talked about the Aquilini family, no mention of Patrick Alvin, which, you know, I don't think there's anything personal between Quinn Hughes and Patrick
I can't
Alvin.
imagine.
I think what it tells me is that what we already knew, that Jim Rutherford was absolutely the point man and the guy in charge. So that's how I read both of those. You know, did he go far enough? I think there are probably a bunch of people that think, no, that he could have said more about the city of Vancouver, the fans here, and maybe that will come in due time. Who knows? I'm not going to get too worked up about an Instagram post.
No. His agent, Pat Brisson, acknowledging, quote, if the Canucks were in a better place right now, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So that added a little more fuel to the fire of those who are upset, angry about this trade, or still want time to process it, but know for a fact they rue and hate the day that it came to this with a Canucks legend. And, of course, that it happens with the Canucks, as you've mentioned, Jeff, in dead last, 32nd place in the NHL. And to that end, when Patrick Allvin met the media on Friday, you asked him a question about all of this, just how quickly all of this has happened, JPat. Here's Jeff questioning Allvin on Friday.
Not even 2 years ago, 50 wins, 109 points, all the All-Stars, individual awards, and you're dead last in the National Hockey League as you sit here and had to trade your captain. I mean, how difficult is it for you as one of the stewards of this group to see where you are as a franchise right now?
Yeah, you're right. I thought we had a great team. We had a great run. We're very excited where we were, and unfortunately things happened, and you're gonna be able to adapt, adjust, retool, and I think we that's what we started with last year in the trade, and unfortunately today here was another step in that direction. Try to again get the new wave, new younger players in here, and start to continue to build a championship team.
So, Jeff, he referenced the trade last year, of course, meaning JT Miller. JT's first name, or at least initials, appeared in the Jim Rutherford statement on Friday. Is it fair to say that this Quinn Hughes trade was a remnant of everything that happened with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller last year?
Well, I think being where they are in the standings is proof of that this organization hasn't recovered. I mean, we all know at one point they had one of the best spines in the National Hockey League with JT and Bo Horvat and Elias Pettersson. They elected to move some of those pieces around for various reasons. Now their surplus is on defense, and they got nothing in the middle of the ice, and that's one of the reasons they are where they are as well. You know, I have to chuckle when I hear him start his answer with that we had a great run. You won one playoff round.
Right.
I know you got to Game 7 against the Oilers and were one win away from
with the third-string goaltender. It was very noble. The effort was very praiseworthy.
Don't give me the run thing. It was, I mean, I guess based and you know, graded against what the organization's put forward over the last decade, winning a round is a run. Yeah. And then when he talks about we have to be able to shift direction and all that. Yeah, but you're 32nd. Like, he didn't really ever. I wanted to hear him take some ownership. The fact that they are dead last in the National Hockey League.
I think there's good reason why he's not taking ownership right now, Jeff. I don't think he further wants to put a bullseye on himself. More on that in a moment. You did the hockey calculation, last place, and yes, moving Miller for Pettersson being so devoid of legitimate NHL centermen this year is a big reason why. But what about the behind-the-scenes thing? I mean, we knew that Quinn and JT were close. We had heard low-level rumblings of Quinn and Elias maybe not being on the same page. If they choose to move Elias and keep JT, do you think Quinn is still here?
Yeah, I mean, we can play the what-if game. I mean, remember when the two of them had their contract squabbles coming out of their entry-level deals, Elias went and spent time with Quinn. And
same agents now, right?
Yeah, so I never got a sense that there was a rift between those two. I don't know that Quinn took a side in this thing necessarily, but, you know, he was the captain. And I see a lot of people say, you know, this happened on his watch. I don't know ultimately what Quinn Hughes, as a teammate and a colleague of those guys, could have done. I think if anybody could have done something, they would have done it. And I mean, we've heard time and time again that the Canucks just felt that there was no resolution, that one of those guys had to go. So I think this season is still fallout. I think part of it is you trade JT away, then you turn around and you take the first rounder, you bring Marcus Pettersson in, who was good after the trade deadline last year and has really struggled.
Awful.
For whatever reason. He's a better player than he's shown this year.
Way better.
But he's what you have to show for the second part of that JT trade.
Yeah, and if you were going to survive in a world with limited offense and no centerman, you really needed to be a batten down the hatches defensive team, and they haven't been that. They were that under Rick Tocchet. They are not that under Adam Foote. And this adaptive man system of his, Pettersson has really struggled, as have some of the other defensemen at different times, and the goaltenders this year, Jeff, in keeping the puck out of their net. Now, Jim Rutherford said on Friday they've been in a rebuild for a bit, which flies totally in the face of the no rebuilds comment he made with Ian McIntyre just a few weeks earlier. Now, for some, that's mixed messaging, that's rewriting history. For others, they may look at it and say, no, that's the natural evolution of the timeline here, and things just moved very, very quickly. Perhaps Rutherford has grounds and permission to articulate that word with his owner at this point. Maybe it's just semantics, or maybe he was informing them at U.S. Thanksgiving, as we learned on Friday, that he wouldn't be re-signing, changed the organizational philosophy, and got them to accept they have to rebuild. Now, Jim Rutherford tells that group of reporters on Friday, quote, they don't have to go full-blown rebuild, but they are willing to trade players for draft capital, and that they are not going to be trading those first-round picks unless it's for a good young player. Funny, it was just last April, Jay Janauer of Global asked Jim Rutherford a question about, the fans dreading a Quinn Hughes trade, and that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for the franchise to bounce back if that day were to ever come. And Rutherford started his answer with "totally agree." Jeff, do you remember that one?
I was in the room, yeah.
So you tell me, is this the natural evolution that has taken place here, where things have even changed since that Rutherford interview with IMAC, or are they trying to rewrite history a little bit?
Oh, I think they're rewriting history. If they claim now that the rebuild really started with the JT trade, then why did you take a first rounder that you had in the palm of your hand that night and trade it to Pittsburgh for a guy that's bumping up against 30 and then re-sign him?
Desperate attempt to get as competitive as possible and hopefully keep Quinn.
The rebuild didn't start the minute you traded JT then. You get Marcus Pettersson and you get Drew O'Connor, who keep talking about wanting guys under 25. Well, O'Connor was past 25 by the time they brought him in, and they extended him quickly as well. So, no, I can only see that as rewriting history.
Okay. This morning I did a radio interview with our old friends Nat and Drew on Move on the FM dial, adult contemporary Christmas music right now. And Nat, every time I go on, Nat's like, okay, I'm not a sports fan, Matt. You understand that? I went, yeah. Jeff, this morning she asked me a question about, boy, these 3 Minnesota players must be loving their lot in life to go from Minnesota to Vancouver with the ocean and the mountains and everything. I went, well, they're not here yet, and it is an atmospheric river, but I hear what she's saying. I wanted to shout this out. Put this up for from a Canucks fan. This is what it comes down to. The beautiful city of Vancouver with the mountains and the great standard of living, the almost decades-long tight friendships with some of the players, none of it was enough to keep one of the best players they ever had. That speaks volumes about how this owner and management failed miserably. That's from Andreas, a Canucks fan. Look, Jeff, we know there has been mighty dissatisfaction with this owner for an awfully long time. Is management able to skate here if this trade works out? Or do you think that this management group will forever be stained in the eyes of Canucks fans in terms of the group that traded Quinn Hughes, and that it's only a matter of time for Rutherford and Alvin?
No, my sense is that they have. I mean, we've heard from various insiders that they've got full support of this ownership right now. But
do they have support of the fans?
Well, fans. No, I mean, I think there are. And we've asked so many poll questions. People are ready for the rebuild. So now it's up to this management group to tune the owner out and follow the process here. No shortcuts. No quick fixes. Like, if you've committed to it, and Jim Rutherford had the word rebuild attributed to him in the press release, stick to the pattern here and continue to trade away veterans, assemble draft picks, and do it right. I think people have an appetite to watch this thing build back up. We're at a point now where, and it was a nice start on Sunday. We went with the 2 points. We talked about Rossi. We'll give Ogren an opportunity here to grow and develop. But I think people can get behind young players that show up, compete, that want to be here, that play hard. And to the tankists out there, you have to remember, they're not going to lose every single game. There's 50 games to go this season. pro sports, like the players are going to try. They're going to run into a New Jersey team that's missing 4 of its top 8 skaters. And Thatcher Demko is going to win them some hockey games. But I think the process there was on full display that they're still not a very good hockey club. No. Now, they'll get Elias Pettersson back at some point, and we'll see what they look like with 2 legitimate centers, and that will change the dynamic for this team this season.
And, of course, Demko, too, right, who is back healthy and played the last couple of games. As Jeff mentioned, the immediate aftermath was a 2-1 victory over the New Jersey Devils. And I'll tell you what, this William kid, he's got some riz. He has got some charisma. He's got some juice to him. Let's hear from him on his immediate contributions in his first game as a Canuck.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always nice, I think, when you're a guy who wants to produce and help the team that way. It's nice to kind of get it early and, nice to see our power play click there a little bit. So, of course it feels good, but I think the biggest thing is we got the win, and, hopefully we kind of take this with some momentum and go upward.
And if you missed it, we got a little deeper into his background on Friday, William. His parents are Israeli. His mom was a basketball player there who moved into management. On the sports executive side, the family moved to San Diego, where Zeev and his brother, who is also a drafted NHL prospect, played their hockey, playing up in L.A. for the most part to find the most competitive league. And he has been talked about for years as one of the truly outstanding young offensive defensemen who will one day quarterback an NHL power play and put up a bunch of points, and he's going to get that opportunity here in Vancouver. I think it's fair to say Canucks fans knew a little bit more about Marco Rossi because we spent all summer talking about him. He was firmly on the trade block in Minnesota after getting demoted in the playoffs. There was concern on the Wild end of things, general manager Bill Guerin, head coach John Hines, that maybe he isn't a playoff-style performer at 5'9", 175 pounds. Now, many will tell you he plays much bigger, much scrappier than his size. Anyways, he was able to come to a contract resolution with the Wild on a bridge deal, paying him $5 million a year for this year and 2 more. He wasn't quite as chatty as William was in the post game yesterday, and the first opportunity to talk to these guys after a game, which is a little awkward in and of itself. And the young Austrian says he is still processing all of this.
You just go and try to play game by game. We don't think really too much. I'm really happy to be here, and I can't wait, in the future.
Have any impressions of Vancouver from your time there as a visiting player?
Yeah, I really liked it there. I liked the city. Like being by the water and stuff like that, so I really like it there.
There you go. He loved the city.
Likes
and the
our
water.
ocean. Now,
yeah.
He's coming from the land of 1,000 lakes.
Yes, but ocean's greater than lakes.
Fair enough.
Well done, Marco. Lastly, in this block here, or this on top story, Jeff, Adam Foote hasn't had an opportunity yet to talk to management about naming a captain. Foote says Philip Hronek will wear an A in the meantime. How do you see the vacant captaincy playing out?
Yeah, I'm not putting a C on anybody for the rest of this season. I think it's one of those things that has to materialize organically. I'm not even sure that their next captain is in the organization as we sit here right now. You could look at Tyler Myers, but
Brock
is...
he's got the long-term deal.
I understand that, but he's also got a ton of baggage in terms of attachment to years gone by that haven't been terribly successful.
Is he going home to Minnesota too, Jeff? Do
you
know something I don't?
No, but it's remarkable that Quinn ends up in Minnesota after all the talk of Brock getting there. I look at Brock Besser. He's a fine player, has been a loyal Canuck, got put through the ringer last year, and then ultimately got the long-term contract, but I don't know that I see him as an alpha, as the guy that is going to be.
Well, Quinn wasn't an alpha either, right?
No, and there are a lot of people that think Quinn didn't do a terribly great job as captain. So, I would sit back on this one. And Phil Hronek doesn't want the public-facing part of the job, but I get that.
That much is clear.
And the ship sailed on EP40 ever being the captain.
I think so as well.
So I think, Connor Garland hustles, and he's committed long-term and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to make Connor Garland the captain of the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, he may get traded this year.
He may get traded too.
Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA, the 473 mil 4-packs on special for the month of December. Look for it on sale at Private And government liquor stores, I know I had a yellow dog or
Oh.
two. In fact, I had one during the emergency
Did
show
you?
on Friday. Some people pointed out, Matty, I saw you taking a few swigs out of the yellow dog on Friday. I needed one, man.
Well, you can do that in the digital world.
Yeah, that's right.
Not worry about it. I too, when I got through, I made an appearance on Convo. I was with you guys. I had to write a column for Canucks Army. My head was absolutely spinning. And when I was done with the workday, to the fridge I went.
And he's not a big drinker at all.
I needed one.
Yeah.
I think we all,
for
collectively,
sure.
the city needed
Oh,
one.
and I think Patrick Alvin needed one after an exceedingly pointed question from our old colleague,
Bruff
Jason
needed one or two.
Bruff. We're going to play you the clip. This is from Alvin on Friday. Just take a listen to this.
Do you have a culture problem that needs to be fixed?
A culture problem on our team?
Yeah, I mean, you had a big fight between two of your leaders, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. One of them had to be traded. You had a head coach that decided not to leave, and now you had a captain that didn't want to stay. Do you have a culture problem?
I don't believe so. I don't think that's the reason why Quinn Hughes is traded here today. I think. I have a lot of respect for JT Miller as well, what he went through last year on his personal side, which I, as an organization, respect a lot. We're very excited with the leadership group and what Adam is building here. The players we got in through the draft over the last couple of years and how they integrated with our team here.
So first off, good on Bruff for asking that so directly. Hockey people are so accustomed to questions being soft-pedaled or prefaced with a position, a premise, if you will. You could see it caught him off guard, and sometimes the visceral reaction says the most. The body language, the stumbling for words there, I think said it all. I also love the indignation from Bruff on that. Yeah, I mean, you had a big fight with two players.
I like how you had to lay it out.
Yeah, exactly.
You may recall.
Which, in a more advanced PR world, like not with sports PR people, but like with the true political PR professional, to be like, never a good idea when you have to clarify the question and then get the laundry list of issues that led to it. Jeff, I'll ask you straight up. They got a culture problem?
A culture problem?
Yeah.
Please explain. I think it's fair to, the question was a fair one. Patrick objected and said things were fine, and that Adam Foote is building. Again, they're 32nd. I know that there are some extenuating circumstances, but a lot of teams have dealt with a lot of injuries, and they're not in 32nd in the National Hockey League. So when you see a coach who, they backed the truck up and made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he refused it, I mean, that was red flags.
Oh, for sure.
The infighting last year, sure. And the fact that they weren't able to build a roster around Quinn Hughes that made him interested. Not even like a Stanley Cup contender, but one that was enough that he could see a vision and wanted to stay.
Yep.
And he wanted out. So
that's a yes?
Yeah. I mean,
it's got to be. It's got to be. Now, there were separate press availabilities on Friday. And this is something that I think we've got to explore a little further and something I'll be watching in the days and weeks and months to come. The notion that Rutherford said Patrick Alvin had a lot on his plate and didn't have time to handle the biggest trade in the history of the franchise, I think it's more than that. I think he was not trusted to market the player, to up the bidding and execute the deal. I think Jim Rutherford has taken back control of the general managing, if you will, for some time now. I'd heard that in the spring following the disaster that was Pettersson Miller last year, the deals that came and going beyond. I'd even heard recently that Jim Rutherford is basically distancing himself from Patrick Alvin, and that's why you saw the dueling press conferences on Friday. And look, I think there's some faith lost in Patrick Alvin, and I think it's fair to consider him as a glorified AGM right now, Jeff, who is not an autonomous agent.
But do you think it had ever risen above that? Like, I think
he's
become apparent abundantly clear here recently that Jim Rutherford's the point guy, and every other manager around the league on this file was saying the
Rutherford
same thing.
had often given him deference and said that Patrick handles the daily calls and does all the execution work of the general manager job. That was not the case with the Quinn Hughes trade.
Yeah, my sense has always been that Jim Rutherford's had both hands on the
Yep.
wheels here, and that at some point maybe he would step away and Patrick Allvin would spread his wings. But
Blake and I had this discussion on Thursday. Like, I think Jim Rutherford was firmly involved in, say, the Marcus Pettersson and the New York Rangers deals because they were huge. Susie for a fourth-round pick at the deadline, I imagine, was probably Allvin. I think you're looking at the meat and potato stuff. Jim was there running things. And the smaller stuff, Allvin may well have been doing it autonomously and just getting Jim to sign off on it. What I do wonder is if this franchise feels it needs a sacrificial lamb right now, I think it's pretty apparent it's going to be Patrick Allvin, and I see Ryan Johnson elevating into the role of general manager. Again, general manager that effectively behaves like an AGM with Rutherford running the show. Can you see that?
I think there's an absolute possibility that Adam Foote is one and done as a head coach, and both Ryan Johnson and Manny Malhotra, if they're interested in jumping on here, if they don't have other and better offers from elsewhere around the National Hockey League, but they could be instilled. I just want to go back to the notion of sort of the dueling media availabilities, and I think people ought to know this part too, that the Canucks made the trade announcement and then put out a press release letting us know that there would be an availability with Patrick Allvin. That was the official team statement, availability, widespread to all media that wanted in. While this is also going on, Jim Rutherford essentially handpicked a small group of local media to hold court with, which I have never seen in all my years. And I go back to the timing of this deal.
Yep.
I go back to the timing of this deal. This is like, we're talking about, is this the biggest trade in franchise history? And at 6 o'clock on a Friday night, they make Patrick Allvin available for 5 questions on Zoom and decide that they can end it, rather than the in-person press conference, face-to-face, stand in there, handle as many questions as the media has for you.
I think Rutherford just couldn't help himself because he loves the spotlight and talking to the public as much as he does. I also think he wanted to be sure to get, to make sure that that his words on this trade were out there on the record, and that he didn't have to leave to Patrick Allvin, however Patrick, and frankly, watching Allvin stumble humana through the culture problem, I think he was probably wise too. That's why I also think there's distance between these guys now, Jeff. Now on Friday, Jeff Merrick joined our emergency show and told us the trade pivots on Zeev Buium, and I get that. Let me give you a counterintuitive take here. The deal pivots on Liam Öhgren, and here's why. Rossi is an established second-line center in the NHL. Buium looks all but certain to be a top 4 power play quarterback. And I understand there's some range there between someone like a Shane Gostisbehere who puts up point but isn't truly a complete top 4 guy, or someone like a Jackson Lacombe, Josh Morrissey, who are a terrific offensive defenseman but also play huge minutes on the defensive side as well. Does William become a top pair NHL defenseman or just a top 4 NHL defenseman, a number 1 and number 2 level, or just a top 4 guy? Rossi, look, even if he isn't going to make it at center, and he's played a lot of center, I think it's fair to say he's a top 6 forward in any way you slice it. But Öhgren, to me, is the wild card a little bit here. Because if he fades into the sea of Granlunds, if you will, and becomes a 0, then the Canucks make it a 3-piece return here if they hit on the pick, and only if they hit on the pick. And it's a 2-piece return if that pick doesn't turn out. If Öhgren hits, Jeff, and becomes a middle 6 winger, even if it's just a third liner, then it's 3 roster pieces plus whatever sugar you can get out of that draft pick. And, of course, that's far more palatable for Canucks fans. Now, 0 points in 19 NHL games for Öhgren this year. It's been a struggle, no doubt. He's a project, as Jeff said. Just 7 points in 47 career NHL games. Might be a quad A player. But 42 and 53 career AHL games, still young, with some good athletic tools. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not ready to go down that road that the trade hinges on Öhgren. I do think that there are some warning signs already. I mean, the no points in 19 games on a good Minnesota team. Even if you're playing low in the lineup, that team is scoring in bunches and winning a bunch of hockey games. So that jumps off the page at me in the career totals to this point. He is young. He's got size. He's got speed. That part is all undeniable. Now the Vancouver Canucks have to go about harnessing because it was a month ago that they also brought in a former mid-teen first-round pick in Lucas Reichel. And
he had no points due.
Well, so, people can say, hey, they got 4 first-round pieces in this deal. Not all first-rounders are created alike, and Lucas Reichel is a cautionary tale there. And Liam Ogren, he's young enough that he deserves an opportunity, and we'll see. But he played 11 minutes in a fourth-line role for the Canucks. Now, there were some moments. He drew a penalty in the hockey game. I want to see him use those attributes, though. They already have Drew O'Connor, who skates well and has some size, isn't terribly physical, though, right? And he got off to a nice start, but he's cooled off.
Don't think he has the
They've
shot
got
and
Niels
the tools.
Höglander, who is weeks shy or days shy now of his 25th birthday. Is he the 24-goal guy of a couple of years ago? Is he the 8-goal guy of last season? I'm going to give him some time to come back from the ankle injury, but in his first 3 games back, he has had zero impact so far.
Zero. I have not even seen a quintessential Höglander shift.
So now you've got Höglander back in the lineup. You've got O'Connor. Now you've brought Ogren in. I did a Canucks mailbag today at Canucks Army, and somebody asked, can you have all 3 of those guys that are essentially the same? They're supposed to be in on the forecheck and be aggressive and abrasive. And I think it's a fair question.
Yep, that's fair. That's fair. Like I said, though, I think Buium is not fully formed, but I think you've got a couple of good players there. The question for me is, does Ogren become a good player as well? And if Canucks fans can take any solace, even those who are mad as hell about losing Quinn and don't like the return, it's that the Hughes family did not get its immediate wish in a deal to the Devils. And while many Devils fans not long ago were saying don't trade anything for Quinn, he'll sign with us in the summer of 2027. Oh, we talked about this Friday, Jeff. Recent struggles, attendance issues, injuries made this some more pressing matter for Fitzy, who is now feeling the heat.
He should have listened
from
to the show on
his
Friday.
Public. Absolutely. We talked about
Make
Does
the deal.
Jersey just make this deal and overpay just to look at this from CJ Turturro. Quinn will be a Devil in 2 years anyway. I think this is radically underselling how much more valuable he'd have been to them now. He's 26, making $8 million. He's going to be 28, making twice that by that time. And by then, we'll have wasted another 2 years of this core's prime. More from Devils fans and media. This one, Locked On Devils. Little Birdie tells me that Siliev and Mercer plus a first was the bulk of the Devils' offer. Canucks wouldn't budge unless Fitz included Nico or Brad. That's Hischier, the center. Don't believe Nemec was involved. Jersey fans are also sore because, Fitzy passed on Buium in the draft for Siliev, the big Russian defenseman. He passed on Rossi as well for Alexander Holtz, who flunked out. So Rossi and Buium are known as 2 guys who got away, Jeff, in Devil land.
I will say this. I understand why the Devils wouldn't even consider Hischier or Bratt. They're still in win-now mode, even though they've got a bunch of guys that are out of the lineup. Why would you part with your captain or arguably one of your top 2 players to bring in Quinn Hughes, and then you just be chasing one of those offensive pieces again? So that never made sense to me.
For sure.
From a Devils standpoint.
Let's get right down to the end. There were 6 suitors involved. Pierre LeBrun reporting from TSN. Minnesota, Jersey, we knew that. Washington, Buffalo, the Rangers, and Carolina on the list, piecing together reports from around the NHL. Jimmy Murphy of RG Media in Boston reports that he heard the Capitals' offer was Connor McMichael. We had talked about him. He's playing wing in the NHL. He has played some center, first-round pick. This is Cole Hudson, the brother of Lane, the Montreal Canadiens defenseman, who's a similar offensively-minded profile player and a prospect. Answer me this, Jeff. Is Rossi Buium better than, say, Edvinsson and Kasper, or Edvinsson and Danielson from Detroit, Sandin Pellikka and Kasper, Dellis, or Danielson in Detroit? Is it better than Nemec or Siliev and Mercer as a 2-piece centerpiece from Jersey?
I think Buium was the best single piece and the apple of the eye of the Vancouver Canucks. Now, if you're asking me about a guy like Nemec, obviously is further along in the curve and is having a nice start to his career in New Jersey. But I think the Canucks like the idea of a 20-year-old. We talked about a 20-year-old that's already stepping up to run their power play now at the National Hockey League level. Rossi's got his flaws. He's not a perfect player. I get that, but he's a 60-point guy in the National Hockey League. If he can be anything close to that here in Vancouver,
it's a very serviceable player.
Yeah. I have my concerns about Petey Rossi 1-2 punch.
Yep.
Just in terms of matching up, if the team gets good enough to get into the playoffs, I'm not sure that those are your guys, but hey, maybe they get the first overall pick and, maybe the 1C is waiting in the draft this year. Who knows?
2 more reviews on the trade from both sides of the ledger. Just food for your fodder. This is Marc Dumont covering the Montreal Canadiens and the Belle Province. Bouillon is the real deal, but I think this assessment is quite accurate. If we're being honest, top pairing upside, middle six upside, and a late first isn't a groundbreaking return for one of the best players in the league. Now, I think he's selling Rossi a little bit short here, middle six upside. I would argue that it was more top
he's a
6
60-point guy before the age of 25.
I mean, that is a top 6 player.
But he's not wrong. There are a lot of ifs. But we always said you're not going to win this trade.
Flip side, from another analyst looking at the trade, very rarely do you win a trade that involves your franchise player. Vancouver has a very real chance of winning the Hughes trade. That's 3 blue-chip young players plus a first. Could not have asked for a better outcome. We'll talk to Darren Dreger and John Shannon coming up here, but everything they're getting back from their network of people suggests the Canucks weren't going to do much better than this. We talked about this on the Friday emergency pod. I don't think this deal goes down, Jeff, unless the Canucks felt like socks were knocked off here in this 4-for-1 return.
And I like Bill Guerin, he said, I knew that Jim Rutherford wasn't messing around here. There was no point in trying to weasel my way into this deal. We felt like we had to bring our best offer.
Especially when they got involved. You weren't going to slow play this. You knew you had to grab attention and quickly. All right, more Canucks news. Lucas Reichel has cleared waivers. He'll report to Abbotsford, but the agent is seeking a trade right now. He may be easier to deal, actually, now that you don't have to account for him on an NHL roster. It's 1 assist in 14 games. He played just one of the last Canucks 10 games. I mean, that's an expensive 4th-round pick to flush so quickly, Jeff, but still think it was worth a shot given the destitution at the time of acquisition.
Right, they had 9 guys out of their lineup when they needed
they were trying to save the season. It was only a 4th-round
that could play hockey.
But
the one thing that doesn't make sense, though, Matt, is they brought him in, they tried him at center, he was not a center,
and they didn't play
and now they sent him to Abbotsford without ever taking a look at him where he's played his best in the NHL on the wing.
Sabres fire general manager Kevin Adams. One day you're trying to land Quinn Hughes, dangling Bowen Byram. The next day you're out of a job. Ex-Columbus general manager Jarmo Kekalainen is going to take over there. He had been a senior advisor. Buffalo said they did an
exhaustive search
and wound up with the guy who was advising the owner.
It has been for 8 months.
Yeah. All right.
How very hockey of them.
Exactly. It's like Francesco's worldwide search that lasted 48, 72 hours and landed on Jim Rutherford. Okay, let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, and we're having a party there on Saturday. The Canucks Army Christmas party is afoot. Saturday, December 20th, doors at 3, puck drop at 4. Wear your holiday best. It's free to get into, but you do want to reserve your spot. Text 604-256-4022. That's 604-256-4022. Text them, reserve your spot. Let them know how many are coming. There'll be specials, $3.33 for a certain brand of beer, $3.33 for the house shot, and some discounts on nachos, wings, a Greta burger. David Quadrelli, our master of ceremonies, host of Canucks Conversation, editor-in-chief at Canucks Army, typically has some holiday or some trivia to play in the intermissions, and everybody is going to get a game card to be able to play in that awesome arcade that encircles the bar. This is Greta, 50 West Cordova. We'll see you Saturday. Let the games begin. We'll have Darren Dreger on coming up here. He's going to take us through everything he heard in the build-up to this trade and the aftermath. Same goes for John Shannon, who, needless to say, like the rest of the hockey world, knocked out of their skates on Friday, even boy, especially Eastern time too, right? Like 7 o'clock roughly, Jeff, as you're sitting down to watch hockey games. And holy cow. I'm going to bet there are a lot of holiday parties where people walked through the door and learned of the Quinn Hughes trade, right? Like, and how about this? We're going to be joined today by a Canucks fan by the name of Dennis Bourke. He is the guy behind this Birdie's Sideburns Twitter account. And we don't have the date on that. But this tweet, for those of you on visual platforms seeing this, he tweeted this about a Quinn Hughes trade in May, everybody. Rossi, William, and a first is the type of deal that gets a team Quinn Hughes. Dennis is a Canucks fan up in the Northwest Territories. We have him on the program today to talk about, well, this tweet back in May and then what it was like for him this weekend as everybody recognized that this guy called 3 of the 4 pieces 7 months ago, Jeff. Astonishing.
Got his own little scouting shop up there in
the does.
Northwest Territories.
Fun interview. This was, needless to say, this guy is a little overwhelmed with his newfound celebrity on social media. All that coming up, plus Caps news, Blue Jays news, Seahawks news, and a great weekend for BC golf coming up on the show. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day, JPat. I wasn't able to sweep the week. Matt. I was 4 for 4 going into Friday. We had the Lions +6. They lost by 7 to the Rams, so missed it by that much. Take the honor. You're on the tee, sir.
Yeah, the Ducks are at the Rangers tonight. Canucks getting the Rangers on the second of back-to-backs, just like they got Jersey on Sunday. Canucks are basically following the Ducks around the metropolitan
Seems that
area.
Way, huh? Yeah.
Rangers are without Mika Zibanejad tonight, who missed a team meeting and is being punished because of it.
Wow.
So he's not going to play. Ducks got throttled by the Devils on Saturday. I suspect they're going to be ready to go. Anaheim, the underdog here. You can get the Ducks at 205 on the money line.
I'm looking at this Monday night football game, and the Dolphins and the Steelers, their offenses don't exactly get you excited, but TJ Watt is out of this game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miami has looked better here, plus it's a very low total. It's even come down today. It was up to 42.5 today. It's now down to 42. So and part of this is wishful, Jeff. I am going to make time to watch at least the beginning of the Dolphins and Steelers. Let's see some points. Let's have some fun. Going over 42 points on Monday Night Football this evening. This segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 plus to play. Please play responsibly. Darren Dreger coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, and this next segment is brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, a no-compromise approach to electric vehicles. This offers the best of both worlds. Drive up to 72 kilometers on the battery side. It's enough to get you downtown to the rink, grocery store. You get home, you recharge, just a regular plug-in. You don't need a special charger here. And then you seamlessly transition from the electric mode to gas for a combined range of 962 kilometers. No sacrifices when it comes to horsepower. And as Blake's been saying, this is a beautiful car. Gorgeous lines. Looks sporty. Loaded with tech that's easy to use. Plug in at and recharge at home or at one of over 2,000 public charging stations across BC. You can lease a 2026 Prius plug-in hybrid SE from $109 weekly at 3.99% APR, 64 months with $3,300 down. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer. Here he is, TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, Mr. Darren Dreger, back with Sekeres and Price. I got Jeff here for Black.
Dregs.
I do. Good to see you guys. I've got my Titleist hat on. We've got about 3 feet of snow here in southern Ontario, so I don't have the luxury of getting to a golf course anytime soon. But I thought, you know what? Normally I come on your show and I've got the Ray and Dregs hat on, but nah, I'm feeling golf-like today.
Oh, wow.
So.
We've got about 3 feet of rain, Drex. I think it's going to be a while before our golf courses want to see anybody traipsing about. Yeah. Okay. Needless to say, the biggest trade in some time in the National Hockey League. Darren, were you surprised at the timing on Friday night?
Yeah, not surprised at the timing per se. But look, like so many others, my side of the business, and you guys who follow it very, very closely, it was impossible to say that a Quinn Hughes trade in season wasn't going to happen. Maybe it wasn't even likely, just based on everything that we knew, and the fact that a player as special as Quinn Hughes, of course, you're going to gather an audience. And the speculation around New Jersey and Detroit was there on a day-by-day basis. But it still felt like it was unlikely given how, we see the pieces that the Minnesota Wild had to invest to acquire Quinn Hughes. Well, that's the very reason why Quinn Hughes didn't go to the Eastern Conference. It's because Detroit and New Jersey couldn't make that type of deal work in season. And honestly, guys, I did not see a team like Minnesota stepping up the way that they did at this point of the year. But then you got to balance that with what we know, the history, the track record of Jim Rutherford, and the big name players that this man has traded over his time in NHL management. And that list is impressive. And we also know historically that Jimmy likes to get his work done early. So maybe we shouldn't have been as surprised as we were. But the whole shock and awe of it wasn't just that Quinn Hughes was traded on Friday. It was that he was traded to Minnesota, a team that really nobody had on their radar as being a likely candidate.
So if we look at it from the Minnesota side, Dregs, and you're right, I think they felt like a little bit of an outsider because there were so many other names linked here. Quinn makes his debut, he scores. I think they've lost 3 times in regulation in their last 21 hockey games. Yeah. They make the deal now. Is there enough runway, do you think, for them with a Quinn Hughes turbo boost to reel in Dallas? Like, it's Colorado, it's Dallas, it's Minnesota in that Central Division. One of those teams isn't even getting out of the first round. So by Mini making the trade now, do you think it gives them enough runway to maybe reel in Dallas and get home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs?
JPat, it gives them enough runway. Whether they do that or not, that's up to the Minnesota Wild. That's a tall ask when you look at how well the Dallas Stars have played to this point of the regular season. Colorado is an absolute juggernaut. So the reason that I like this trade is because, look, I just gave credit to Jim Rutherford for doing what he always does. He dives into that trade pool early. That's not new for Jimmy. But how about a little love going to Billy Guerin and by extension the owner, Craig Leopold? Guerin's got some serious stones based on what you just said. Like, yes, of course, he's bringing in an all-time player in Quinn Hughes, but he gave up some incredible assets, incredible talent that is now property of the Vancouver Canucks. In a year where you're looking at how well the Dallas Stars are playing, formidable, right? Is there weakness in that Stars lineup? Well, maybe, Tyler Seguin is hurt, but beyond that, there isn't. Their goaltending is there. Their defense is exceptional. And, they've got some pretty good talent up front. And you could say the same thing of what's going on in Colorado. So imagine how that conversation goes between Billy Guerin and Craig Leopold. And this was a week ago. And I don't know how much reporting has been done in your market here, fellas, but so here's what went down. Right? Everybody knew that Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford were talking to the teams in the East. We all knew that. Billy Guerin picks up the phone, calls his old buddy, Jimmy, now 8-9 days ago on Friday, was roughly a week ago, and said, hey, I keep reading and hearing that Quinn wants to go to the East. But if there's a chance that a team like Minnesota can get in, then we'd like to get in. Yeah, there's a chance. Why wouldn't there be a chance? Make your best offer. And they crept along that line until, as he said on Friday, he's rolling meatballs in his kitchen and the phone rings and there's Rutherford saying, yeah, we have a deal. Well, like if I'm a team or a fan base in any other market, I got some questions. I've got some questions for my team's general manager and ownership and everyone else. You say you're a contending team. You want to be a competitive contending team. You've got, just enormous holes in your roster, but you don't have the intestinal fortitude to go out and do what the Minnesota Wild did. So, man, I don't know that they've got enough talent in that group to tangle with the likes of the Colorado Avalanche, but they're a hell of a lot better today and that's saying a lot because they gave up real nice pieces out of Minnesota. But for my money, they're better.
Well, from a Vancouver perspective, Dregs, let's hope Rossi, Buim, and Ogren are more sirloin than they are meatballs coming over from Minnesota. And look, if this does ignite an arms race in the Central, game on. I'd be an interested spectator if everything is going down in the Central between now and the deadline. You mentioned Jersey and Detroit, Darren.
Yeah.
Who else was in this at the end?
Weirdly, the New York Rangers, because my brain won't allow me to go there. With all due respect to Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox, can you really have the same guys? I don't think so, but we're told the Rangers were in there. Buffalo had strong conversations. Again, nobody is willing to fully disclose what the pieces were that Vancouver was after off of each of these teams. I know that Rutherford specifically has had a soft spot for Bo Byram for a long time. So I would wonder, I'm not reporting, I would wonder if Byram would have had to have been part of that package. But I talked to Tom Fitzgerald from the Devils this morning. And, of course there was considerable interest. Absolutely there was. It wasn't a money issue. They could have eventually LTI'd somebody, right? They just, it was the components and less from New Jersey's perspective, but from Vancouver's standpoint. Keep in mind, guys, this happens all the time. Not normally in December, normally around the trade deadline, where you've got an offer that you can really live with. And so Vancouver took that Minnesota offer, probably didn't disclose it was Minnesota, but said, we've got 4 primary elements, including a first-round draft pick, and then we've got some real nice NHL roster pieces. Give me your best shot. And, the Devils just went, okay. Without knowing specifics, couldn't do that. I don't think Detroit has the depth in their existing roster to do that without doing serious damage. And, the New York Rangers as well. So those 4 teams, I think, primarily were the focus teams in the East.
It certainly sounds like Minnesota had the best overall package. From your understanding, though, was Zeev Buim the best individual piece or prospect that was offered up? Do you know of other names?
No, not really. But, I mean, JPat, you watch a ton of hockey, right? I mean, this kid is special. He is. So, who are we talking about off the roster given, his age, talent set, all of those things? And it's impossible to say because nobody is going to officially disclose that. For sure, there's going to be, parts that are leaked through speculation that we're going to learn of. But I can look at any of the 4 teams that we've mentioned at their rosters, at what they've got developing, and pick a player that I think might get into that category of where Zeev is. But you're talking right up there in the penthouse. Like, Minnesota did not want to give up on they didn't. They didn't want to give up on this kid, but they realized or recognized that, look, if we are going to go to war with Dallas and or Colorado, and we're going to try and win a Stanley Cup in the next couple of years, Quinn Hughes gives us a better option than Buim does. But I think in time, Zeev Buim has the potential to be as good as Quinn Hughes. I mean, that's how talented this kid is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big statement, Darren. Because we had heard his name back in the summer, and we had discussed some of the reasons, but I'd like to hear it from you, best you understand it. Why was Minnesota so anxious to deal Marco Rossi?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because now it's unrelated to his contract negotiations. I don't think that there was any sort of animosity that lingered beyond that. Does he fit the eye of Bill Guerin or Hines? I guess not. But doesn't it go back to the old understanding again that Rutherford has always embraced? Bill Guerin talks about, and I'm sure he did, I didn't see his full media availability, but Billy Guerin has said this publicly a number of times because he learned it from Jimmy. When you make a trade, it's certainly a blockbuster like this, everybody's got to walk away from the deal happy. And if you embrace that as your end goal, okay, the Vancouver Canucks get the package they needed to get to deal their captain. Quinn Hughes obviously is okay with being in Minnesota, keeps saying that he is. He's playing like he is. Again, the sample size is small. But then you're the Minnesota Wild and you get the player that you've coveted for a while. Secretly, you've got to give up high quality to get that player. And so I don't know that they were shopping, trying to move Marco Rossi beyond the negotiation through the contract. But I think that the recognition is there. Vancouver had very specific needs to keep that team competitive. And, that's the sidebar for all of this to me. Yeah, there's a chance that there's more teardown happening in Vancouver between now and March 6th, right? There's a chance. You get into the second half, you revisit the idea of moving Keeper Sherwood or those pending unrestricted free agents. But isn't there a chance that this team stays competitive?
Well, gets competitive. I think gets competitive. They're last place in the NHL. So we've been having some fun with stay competitive. I hear what you mean, Darren. Blake's. That was the first words out of Blake's mouth on Friday when we did the emergency show. Is that you can make a case that with 3 roster pieces added now, including filling a huge hole at second line center, that they could be better and improve between now and March and the end of the season.
Beyond the trade itself, did we have a watershed moment, though, late on Friday when the Canucks issued the press release and used the word rebuild, Darren? They had been fighting the use of the word rebuild, but it was attributed to Jim Rutherford. So what do we make of them finally relenting and giving the people, a lot of the people here, ultimately what they want?
Well, when it comes to the R words, rebuild is the worst, right? You can say retool, you can say renovate, all of those things. Rebuild, I mean, it sounds like it's a take it right down to the wood type of situation. I don't think it's that. But I can tell you that Canucks management, and I assume ownership, were very excited and happy when they made the deal on Friday. And I think it's pretty obvious, and I think Jimmy acknowledged this as well. They've known for a long time that Quinn Hughes wasn't going to extend. Well, if you know that, then the rest is just smoke and mirrors, right? It just is. And I feel badly because, and look, it's not, hey, we can ask the questions. Doesn't always mean we get the truth or we deserve the answers. But the messaging all along was from the start of the year, well, Vancouver needs to be competitive to buy time, to prove to their captain, to prove to Quinn that they're a team that he should want to extend with. Well, okay, but it doesn't sound like that message was delivered by either Quinn or Pat Brisson, and Vancouver has known that for a long, long time. So now go back to why is Jimmy Rutherford, Patrick Galvin, and everyone so excited? Well, they stay competitive this year, great. Or get competitive or more competitive. I mean, chances are non-playoff team. You're going to move out some other pieces. They're going to put themselves in a spot where if it's a retool or renovations, it could happen very quickly. But I know that Rutherford specifically is excited because I think he feels like if or when he leaves the Vancouver Canucks, he's going to leave the Canucks as an organization in a better position for longer term. And we'll see if that's the way it turns out. I mean, it could. The 3 young pieces that are in the lineup now, They're good pieces. You've got a first-round draft pick in a deep draft in 2026. And again, maybe Vancouver doesn't stay as competitive and they collect 2 or 3 more higher valued draft picks. So there's lots of promise there, but it's long-term.
Darren, speaking of the future, I think a lot of eyebrows were raised here on Friday when Rutherford and Alvin did separate media conferences on this. Jim said Patrick had a lot on his plate, so he ran the Quinn Hughes trade, and we're sitting there going, what could be more important than the Quinn Hughes trade? And then Alvin gets asked point blank, do you have a culture problem? And boy, that was a tough answer for him. Do you see any fissures or fractures here between the Canucks management team? Is it possible that Patrick Alvin is going to have to wear this season here going forward?
I don't think so. I haven't heard that. But, you know, everything that we heard in following up on Friday and doing our due diligence was that, you know, Jim Rutherford ran that trade from beginning to end. You know, and he would do that in concert with Alvin. But, you know, even Guerin acknowledged, you know, while he's making the meatballs, it was Jimmy that called him to say that, you know, we have a done deal. Now, that would speak to the relationship that those two men have, but Patrick Alvin has a good relationship with Billy Guerin. So I don't know. I don't get the sense that there's any sort of fractured relationship, but it's abundantly clear that Jim Rutherford was the driving force in what is a very significant trade, blockbuster trade by NHL standards, and a very significant trade to the future of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yep. Last one from me, Dregs. When you talk to your people around the league, how do they feel Vancouver did here on the return?
Really well. Yeah, really well. For all the reasons that we've talked about here. Marco Rossi, I don't think he's underrated. You know, but he's going to be a good fit. And frankly, he's a godsend to the Vancouver Canucks. Liam Ogrim, I don't know much about him, but the feedback is that he's faster than what maybe most people thought. Young guy. He's got a lot to learn yet. Zeev, we've already talked about him, the special talent that he provides. But I think that there are going to be some triggers in some areas that we're going to watch unfold here. Like I watched a bit of that power play, the new look power play now, obviously the Vancouver Canucks. Small sample size. I'm not sure it's not going to be better. And that I'm not pointing my finger at Quinn and saying he was holding back the power play, the Vancouver Canucks. That's crazy. But it's a different sort of structure now with different assets and skill sets that Adam Foote can throw at the group. So I think it's a win-win. I really do. And I think just pure hockey analysis, I haven't found anybody yet that says, the Canucks the Canucks could have done better or Minnesota overpaid or any of that. I think mostly people look at it as fair value.
Yep. No, I hear the William kid's going to run a hell of a power play, and you got another guy there, especially in Paterson's absence in Rossi.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we thought we would be every week on this topic till March at least, Darren.
The dust may still be falling in March.
I mean, there is more to come. That much we know, and we will continue to discuss with Mr. Dreger of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, TSN
Thanks,
Hockey
Greg.
Insider. Thank you, sir. Happy
Thanks,
holidays.
guys. Yes, same to you.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. We're joined now by the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, his podcast, 100% Hockey, and, of course, the most famous man from all over British Columbia, Mr. John Shannon. How are you? Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you guys. Nothing going on, right? Pretty quiet.
No. Oh, my goodness. We've had a month here, John, with this and the Whitecaps. It's been busy in the city of Vancouver. First things first, what did you make of the trade?
Well, I knew you knew something was happening. You could, and Jeff, I think you probably talked about it more on your post-game stuff than anybody. You could read it on Quinn's face. You could read it in his body language. It was pretty obvious that something was going to happen. And obviously now, as we're getting the background on what went on, they told the Canucks they weren't re-signing, and Pat Brisson was given permission to go and troll. So Pat Brisson did a hell of a job. And Bill Guerin did a hell of a job. And quite frankly, when you think of the Canucks getting a 26th first rounder and then 3 former first round picks, 2 of which we know a lot about, in Buum and Rossi. I think the Canucks might have done okay as well. I don't mind what they did, and based on what we saw in New Jersey, they handled themselves pretty well under the circumstances.
What are your people saying about it, John? What are you hearing back from your network?
It's 50-50. It's one of those ones where the Canucks didn't get enough, or Billy Guerin's got balls, or, the Canucks really did well. The one thing I can tell you, Matt, is I talked to somebody inside the organization yesterday after the game, and the line was simple. It's nice to see people smiling again. And I think that speaks volumes to the learning curve this organization has had in the last 2 years. There was no chance they were going to let this linger. It just was not going to be hung over their heads like the Paterson-Miller soap opera did for so long. And so when the news came, fish and cut bait. Let's just go and get something done that we can start to do what we need to do in Vancouver to improve this hockey team. And you know what? I have enough friends in Minnesota to know too. They loved Buum. They loved him. They thought he was going to be a star. But in their world, behind Faber, behind Brodin, behind Spurgeon, how much ice time was he going to get? Truly. So this might be a classic case in the short term where people are going to point and say, you know what, Minnesota might win today, but the Canucks are in the long term might have done very, very well for themselves.
I'm seeing a lot in my social channels, in our feedback channels here, just talking to friends who are Canuck fans over the weekend. As they come to terms with it, people are like, I'm all right with the return they got. I just hate the fact that they had to make this trade. I mean, on some level...
So who do you put that on? Jeff, who do you put that on?
Well, I think there's plenty to go around. I mean, 50 years of chasing a star-level defender, and ultimately they get him for parts of 7 seasons and couldn't build around him. On some level, is this an organizational failure?
I think we could point fingers at everybody, and I quite frankly, I think I felt much better for the Canucks after listening to Quinn yesterday after the game. I mean, he didn't want to stay in the end. After the playoff round against Edmonton, the 7-game series, everybody was really bullish. And what changed is, the relationship between Miller and Paterson festered. It was rampant through the organization somehow, some way. It wasn't as if they ignored it internally. They tried to fix it. And it seemed to have those types of ramifications long term. And then Rick Tocchet didn't want to stay. So when you can sit and point your finger at the organization and then say, well, if guys don't want to be here, are you going to force them to be here? Quinn Hughes didn't want to be here in the end. Rick Tocchet didn't want to be here in the end. There are enough people out there that love Vancouver, want to be in Vancouver, and will play in Vancouver that this team, maybe not tomorrow, but this team can still win. So I think that there's different ways to look at it. It's not as simple as, well, it's an evil empire, and we're gonna point fingers that way. I think that there's a good chance that in some sort of rebuild retool, this team can still compete.
Do you understand it from a fan perspective, though, John, that it looks very much like there's a culture problem with the Vancouver Canucks right now?
I'm not in the market as much as you guys are, so it's difficult for me to sit here and say, well, that's wrong or that's right. What I would say is, and knowing the people who are running the organization, there are ways that they do things, and that's the way it's going to be. And in the end, I think, and again, listening to Quinn yesterday, and I don't think he was blowing smoke. he was very appreciative of the way the Canucks managed this whole scenario. So they do have a level of professionalism, Matt. I know it's hard to believe sometimes.
No,
they do have a level of professionalism they understand.
Yeah.
You know, and so from that perspective, Jim Rutherford does care about people. He does. He cares about people a great deal. In fact, I would argue sometimes that he's got his bluntness on one side and then his passion to look after people on the other. And sometimes those two don't meet. But I have the utmost respect for what he's done in his old career, not just necessarily in Vancouver, and probably have some faith that he can rebuild it again.
Let me ask you this, because you just brought his name up, Miller, and his name was in Rutherford's statement on Friday. Look, Quinn said all the right things after they made the trade for JT Miller and kept Elias Pettersson, but we know there was rapport there between Hughes and Miller. Do you think if they choose Miller over Pettersson, they're making this deal? Or do you think Quinn was gone regardless?
I was actually going to go deeper than that. I was going to say, Horvat over Miller. So those are subjective decisions. Those are decisions you make. You think that are doing the best thing for the franchise, and during the playoff run that they got the two rounds. I mean, the Miller sticking with Miller looked great, and then I can't imagine and understand what went on and how bad it was, and yet Quinn and Elias were friends at a certain point as well too. So it's difficult for me. I don't know the inner workings of those three relationships, so it would be difficult for me to say.
You talked about talking to people in the organization, John. Their win in New Jersey yesterday vaulted them all the way to, they stuck in 32nd. It didn't even get them out of the basement. Do you get a sense, fans here are freaking out, but do you get a sense that there is frustration, embarrassment? What's the sense you get about where this team is and the way it got there pretty quickly? We're not even at Christmas.
They can't play at home, Jeff.
Tell me about it. Don't tell me about it.
If you look at them, I think they're a game over 500 on the road now.
They are,
and they can't win it. They can't win at
15
home.
games, yeah.
And I don't know how anybody can explain that. And that to me, I think, is probably the biggest frustration internally. Is that, okay? Listen, I don't think there's any question. At least this team plays hard. The guys they have play for the logo. They play hard, but sometimes spinning their wheels, and particularly at home, it's inexplicable at times.
No, you've just articulated how long and how well you know Jim Rutherford. He said rebuild. Do you think they will see it through at this point? Because Trevor Linden said rebuild once and didn't get to see it through. You think they'll see through rebuild, John?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that this organization, I think there's still solid communication on all sides between ownership and hockey ops and management, and I think that I don't think there's patience. There never is patience, but I think there's respect and understanding of what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it.
Who's next? What are you hearing? You think we're going to see this happen in succession, or do you think most of the heavy lifting now waits till closer to March and the trade deadline post Olympic break?
The only question mark, again, and this is not news to you guys, is Sherwood. What happens with Sherwood? Where does he go? I actually joked with somebody yesterday. I said, "Well, there's more money in the market. Maybe there's more money for Kiefer Sherwood now, but who knows?" At this point, I think in the end for him, it's going to be, if he can settle on something of a tangible term that works for the hockey club, then we're not having this discussion. No, he's a fan favorite, works hard, plays hard, has the right thing in mind, but he's 30 years old, And do you want to be into a contract 5 years from now when he's 35? Particularly the way Kiefer plays the game. That's the real challenge. That's the real challenge.
There's a school of thought, John, that adding 3 roster players, including finally filling that top 2 center hole with Rossi, and not to mention getting a guy who can replace Quinn as a power play quarterback, at least, if not the whole 9 yards, that they could be a better team from here. They could go about and win some more games, pull themselves out of the basement. Do you think they're a better team today with these 3 guys in the lineup than they were with Quinn?
I think it's far too early to decide that. The key thing is, are those 3 guys? I mean, look at the guys they didn't play yesterday. Look at the guys they scratched: Baines, Ratu. When Elias comes back, who's going to Abbotsford? So they needed 3 players to come onto the roster. They felt they were going to get 3 players to play on this roster. So yes, they might be better because they're deeper. And I give full marks to all the kids that won in Abbotsford at the won the Calder Cup last year, but some of them may not be NHL players, and they have been bumped down the ladder a little bit right now, and that's a fact. Ogren's the one I don't know enough about him. And talking to 2 or 3 people on the weekend, he's not good enough, and the other guy said, well, he's got great potential. We had Brian Lawton on our show, and he couldn't stop talking about Ogren today. So how positive he was. So from that perspective, the other 2 guys I think we know enough about. The other 2, Rossi and Buim, are going to be good players. They're going to be, Rossi's a top 9. Top 6 might be generous. He's a top 9 player. He's an NHL player that can play the game. The defenseman's going to be, I think, well, let's hope they get 7 years out of him.
Yeah.
I think one angle that really hasn't been discussed here, and part of it's out of sight, out of mind right now, is that Elias Pettersson's not in the lineup, but he should be back maybe as soon as tomorrow against JT and the Rangers. But Quinn's not here anymore. Quinn was such a play driver. What does Elias Pettersson do now? He has been surrounded by other stars. Obviously couldn't get along with JT, but I am curious. I mean, we know that the struggles have been there. He's the highest paid guy on this team. They need him now more than ever to try to get back to being the star level player that he was. I'm curious what he looks like without Quinn Hughes in the Canucks lineup.
Okay, so the moment you started that sentence, Jeff, I thought of one player with a different team, and that is Austin Matthews without Mitch Marner. And there's a good chance for both Matthews and Pettersson that they are not the same elite players that we expected them to be. Money aside, they might be forced to play the game differently. And so, I mean, look at the stats. Who blocks more shots as a forward in the NHL than Pettersson? It's not a question of him trying to avoid anything. I think right now, he's trying, but he's not the offensive juggernaut that he once was. He's just not. And the same, as I said, the comparison to Austin Matthews without Marner is here. And the Maple Leaf issue is there's nobody there to get Matthews the puck. And so that's the question. Who's going to get Pettersson the puck? And is Pettersson going to be in the right position to get the puck? So it's a good question.
Lastly, from me, John, you're a British Columbian. You've had long history in this game. I want to bring you back to January 17th, 1999, 27 years ago almost, when the Vancouver Canucks trade Pavel Bure to the Florida Panthers in what was a 7-player, 2-pick deal. So it's bigger in terms of component parts. Nobody will argue that. Ironically, the Canucks got 4 first-round picks, or guys who were 4 first-round picks back in that deal. biggest trade in Canucks history as you see it, my friend? Did it go down Friday, or was it Pavel Bure 27 years ago?
I think this trade's bigger. Mainly because, and don't get me wrong, I would argue Pavel Bure may have been the greatest Canuck of all time. But Quinn Hughes' impact in the game, in the NHL, I think is bigger than Pavel Bure's.
Is that the defenseman winger thing, John, that he impacts the game?
I think that all of that, the fact that he's gone to a team now that I think you have to put on the short list of Stanley Cup contenders. You weren't putting Florida on the list of Stanley Cup contenders when Pavel went there. So I think you're right. Not as many names, not as many picks, but the impact of this in the game of hockey might be bigger than we saw with the Bure trade.
Yep. Yeah, I think you can make the case. Beautifully made. Mr. Shannon, thank you for this. Merry, happy. Appreciate the commentary and being available today. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, John.
Cheers, boys. Have a good day.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. And I don't know about you, JPat, but on Friday after we got done with the emergency podcast, Mike and I had some dinner. And then I was looking at the social media and just looking at all the reaction from Canucks fans to this massive trade. When I stumbled upon this tweet, and for those of you on visual platforms, you'll see it here from an account, Bertie's Sideburns at Bourke Tuesday. This is from back in May. I'm going to say this, everyone looking for a Quinn Hughes trade out of New Jersey. You don't have the center to make that deal. The most likely trade candidate for the Canucks will be the Minnesota Wild. Rossi, Buium, and a first is the type of the deal that gets a team Quinn Hughes. Well, that account belongs to Dennis Bourke. He's a Canucks fan, originally from Fort Smith and Northwest Territories, and he joins us from Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories now. Dennis, how was your weekend?
It's been quite a crazy weekend, to be honest. I didn't even know how big this tweet was getting until I woke up Saturday morning and I was like, "Oh wow, this is getting big."
I'm just looking at the backdrop there. I don't see a crystal ball anywhere.
No, nothing here like that. It just got lucky once, I guess.
So the trade goes down on Friday, Dennis. Do you remember tweeting this in May?
Yeah, I do. I do remember tweeting it. I remember waking up on that morning, and then there was a lot of talk about Quinn Hughes. It just restarted all the trade talk with Quinn Hughes going to New Jersey all over again, and then everybody throwing out all their New Jersey trades, and it's like, well, I don't think Mercer's getting it done for you guys, but you know.
So you remember?
Yeah, that's the way.
Do you remember crafting it in May? Like, do you remember writing it in the moment?
Yeah, well, I kind of went through. I'm a bit of a hockey fan, so I kind of went through a lot of like different teams and stuff like this, and I was, you're not trading it to the Pacific. Maybe he's gonna go east, but he could still go close to playing like around the Minnesota area or Michigan areas like that. So I don't know. I just kind of looked around, and the only teams who really had the pieces we needed were the Wild for sure for us. Well, at the time it felt like that, like with a Rossi and with the, like, I don't know, not too many people seem to know who this Buium kid is, but he's a player. He's going to be good. So that's just how it came about then.
Are you a guy that charts prospects? Like, I mean, there are some people that know the depth charts of every organization around the league. Like, to be able to come up and fabricate this trade proposal, where was your interest level in sort of some of these pieces that, you know, hadn't yet hit in the National Hockey League?
I do follow a lot of prospects quite closely. So, or a lot of players, teams. I probably know most rosters in the NHL at this point, and it's just, yeah, like I don't know. There's just nobody else who had the same packages the Wild could give, and like with the Wild in their place where they were, they just cleared Parise and Sutter's contracts there, Suter, and got that off the books. They just signed. Well, they hadn't signed Kaprizov yet, but But they're a team who's like probably going to be most likely to make a move like that would actually pay what we needed.
So, Dennis, you called the trade. Do you like the return as a Canucks fan?
Yeah. Well, when you trade the best player in the deal, you never really win. But it's getting by him and a second line center finally is it eases the pain, but it still could. If you still traded the best player, and the team never wins when you trade the best player, in my opinion.
Tell us, grew up in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. Tends to be more oil country than it is Canuckland. How'd you become a Canucks fan?
Well, I just got lucky when I was, 6, 7 years old and getting into hockey, and the team at that point was the Vancouver Canucks coming up and going to the Cup final there, and I just latched on, and then they had guys like, McGillney, Bure, Trevor Linden, and then they also had Gino Ojic, who was like, I'm Indigenous as well, so he's a Indigenous hockey player, one of the only ones in the NHL at the time, maybe the only one. And so you latch on to things like that when you're a kid. And I was also kind of always like a little bit cheeky, so I never wanted to cheer for the Oilers like everybody else.
Tell me, how are your friends and family, your fellow hockey fans, how are they reacting to all this newfound celebrity or viral moment that you had?
Oh, man. Well, it's everywhere. So everyone's always like, is this you? And like, as they find out it's me, they're like, it's been crazy. I don't know. My phone is still blowing up even today. And I'm like, should I just turn the notifications off at this point, or do I just keep looking? What do I do? Yeah. It's been a wild weekend, though.
To say the least. Here's the big question, Dennis. How'd you miss Liam Ogren?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea how I missed them. I can't believe it, actually. No.
Hey, Matt asked you how you liked the trade, and you talked about dealing away the best player and arguably one of the best in franchise history. As a Canucks fan, just a thought or two on the state of the franchise as it sits 32nd in the NHL standings these days.
Yeah. It's been a long 10 years so far since we got in the playoffs a couple times there. We were so close, but man, I don't know what to say about the state right now. Well, with we still got lots of good young guys. We still got Lecker and Willander, the Patersons, and sometimes teams can bottom out a year and make a couple good draft picks, and the next couple of years they're right back at it again. But history lately hasn't really shown that we can do that.
So we got to ask you, Dennis, who's next? Where's Kiefer Sherwood going? What's the return?
Oh, come on, you gotta put me on the spot like that.
Well, let me just ask you this: do you play the lottery?
Oh, everyone keeps asking me things like that in lottery, and I'm like, and they're asking what my next parlay is, and I'm like, guys, if you've seen my deficit on my Bet365, you would not be asking me these questions.
Well, my friend, we're talking to Nostradamus here. What a remarkable call back in May. This was great fun, buddy. It's awesome to hear that we got people following the Vancouver Canucks up in the Northwest Territories, and especially those who are inspired by the 94 team. And Gino, if you're ever down in Vancouver, Dennis, you stop by Wall Center, you come over and say hello, all right? Because we'd love to meet you in person. Appreciate this.
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center and the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio, built by Arbor Lee. Big game downtown. Make it more in the night. Make it a memory. Stay steps from the action here at the Sheraton Vancouver Wall Center with an exclusive Sekeres and Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention us and the show. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Well, Vancouver Whitecaps FC know when and where their 2026 season is opening, Jeff. It happens just that quickly in MLS. If you go to MLS Cup, you have no offseason. You get like a holiday break, like the kids, and then you're right back at it. This is versus Costa Rican side Carta Iñas in round one of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Of course, Caps made it to the final of this tournament last year, losing down in Mexico. They will visit Estadio Felo Meza on February 18th for leg one, then back here at BC Place, presumably with the lease deal, on Wednesday, February 25th for leg two, and that is effectively their home opener because these games happen before MLS play gets going.
So these games won't be played at the new soccer stadium in town.
Believe it or not, Jeff, they may need a little bit more time to get that soccer stadium in place. But yeah, folks, if you're not familiar, like they're at this, they actually, I should correct myself. They even got a game February 21st versus Real Salt Lake. So yeah, it's going to be busy. Got some details on one of the offers, according to Glass City, for the club. This is the investment offer. Of course, they're looking for partners. They're looking for a buyer for the club. And Glass City reports that someone is willing to invest $700 million total. That includes $270, which would be allocated for the new stadium, aforementioned. And then, of course, that person would join the ownership group alongside of Greg Kerfoot and Jeff Mallett. Now, no names here, and as Axel Schuster said Thursday at that event at City Hall with Marican Sim, look, now we're going to be quiet again as we manage the next steps in all of this and see who will be joining the club by way of investing or as majority owner going forward. That is still possible. Reports from Brazil that Atlético Paranaense has made now a formal offer for midfielder Andres Cubas. Last week, the reports were the price was too rich, so we'll see where this one goes. And transfer market, our buddy Manuel Veth, they are reporting there's been positive movement with goalkeeper Yohei Takaoka, whom Axel Schuster said was a 50-50 bet to return when we spoke to him Thursday. Takaoka, of course, he's a free agent, so there's no transfer fee required here. He can sign with anyone in MLS, anybody in the world. Well, the Seattle Seahawks made it tough on themselves, JPat, but they beat the Indianapolis Colts on a 56-yard field goal from Jason Myers in the dying seconds. This after Indianapolis's kicker makes a 61-yarder in the damp and in the rain, right down the tubes with distance to spare. So Seattle avoids losing to 44-year-old comeback quarterback Phillip Rivers out of retirement, first game since 2020, 18-16. They win. This from our buddy Captain Greg Bell covering the Seahawks. How good is Mike McDonald's defense? The Seahawks have won only 4 games in franchise history without scoring an offensive touchdown. 2 of those have been in the last 12 months, including yesterday. Now, the Rams also win. They beat the Detroit Lions. That was a fun game. The Lions came to play. They were motivated on the outside of the playoffs looking in as after being the top seed in the NFC last year. So both teams are now 11-3 heading into that big Thursday showdown at Lumen. Jeff, this
in
is
the slop. It's they got the same forecast we do basically, and so be interesting to see how the elements play into it. Speaking of elements, and Phillip Rivers, he almost managed his way to the upset victory there. Didn't throw the ball downfield until the end when he got picked off.
Was basically a statue. I mean, most quarterbacks don't look that sort of he looked like a sports media guy.
Yeah, he's not terribly mobile at this stage.
Paunchy.
He's a grandfather, Matt.
Hey, yeah, exactly.
I mean, the stories were all out there, but I mean, he sounded incredibly grateful for the opportunity after the fact, and they put a scare into the Seahawks, who, as you said, they're 11-3, but and they've won 4 in a row. But the offense have scuffled in 3 of the last 4 halves. I mean, they had the slow start in Atlanta last week before they figured it out, and really never got going yesterday with the 6 field goals. So that offense is going to have to be better. Against the Rams on Thursday night.
And if people are getting worried about Sam Darnold, you remember he had the great season last year for Minnesota, then the Rams and the Lions late in the season. He just couldn't bring his best there. Anyways, this is the game of the NFL year on Thursday down the I-5 with both teams being 11-3. Let's hope it delivers on the field. And let's also not forget, San Francisco is right there. They won yesterday too. They remain 10-4 in stocking position. They do hold the tiebreaker over Seattle right now by virtue of that Week 1 win at Lumen. Those teams will meet in the final weekend of the regular season. Around the NFL yesterday, the Chargers beat Kansas City, who lose quarterback Patrick Mahomes to an ACL injury. Kansas City eliminated from the playoffs with 3 games left. Astonishing stuff. Denver beats Green Bay, who lose the division lead to Chicago, and star edge rusher Micah Parsons, the ex-Cowboy, to an ACL. And how about this, Jeff? For the first time in 28 years, because, of course, the NFL playoffs will take place in January 2026, there will be a postseason without these 3 franchise quarterbacks. No more Tom Brady, no more Peyton Manning. Just when they were entering their retirement, along came this Mahomes guy. All 3 of them will be missing from the playoffs for the first time since 1998. I mean, people have been born, got married, and had children since one of those.
Time marches on, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Baseball, where both of the teams of interest here locally are affected over the weekend. The Blue Jays signed relief pitcher Tyler Rogers, who has really been one of the most consistent setup men, middle relievers in the game over the last few years. There he is with the Mets. It's a 3-year deal. He averages north of $12 million per season. And here's the thing. Rogers is a submariner. Yeah, look at the photo there for those of you on visual platforms. So think of the difference in hitters now when Rogers relieves Trey Yesavage. For those of you on visual platforms, there is the graphic. Yesavage, one of the most over-the-top pitchers in all of baseball, a 63-degree arm angle, and then Rogers from just about the mirror opposite, and minus
like a windmill.
61 absolutely arm angle. So I'm sure the Jays pitching and analytics guys love that. Toronto also acquiring relief pitcher Chase Lee from Detroit. He pitched 32 games to a 4.10 ERA in his rookie season. They sent Johan Simon, who had pitched for the Vancouver Canadians last year, back to Detroit in the deal. And then with the Mariners, well, look, they had interest in bringing Jorge Polanco back, but Jared DePoto said last week they were going to add a bat that could play either second base or third base. Polanco signs with the Mets. It's a 2-year, $40 million deal. I don't think Seattle was interested in matching that sort of salary for Polanco. And the Mets say he's going to play first base, replacing Pete Alonso. I'm going to guess Seattle also had their concerns about Polanco holding up in the field at second base. So it was 6 days ago that DePoto said we're going to add a bat probably in the next week. So they're on the clock. We'll see what they do. They're looking at second baseman and third baseman. And then huge weekend in the world of golf for British Columbia. Holy cow, Jeff. Coquitlam's A.J. Ewart wins the PGA Tour Q School to get his PGA Tour card. He is joined by fellow British Columbians, Surrey's Adam Svensson, who was tied for second. Now they join Vancouver's Leah John, who qualified for the LPGA Tour last week. We'll have her on the show tomorrow. You follow golf as closely as anyone I know in this province, outside of Brad Zemer, our buddy who writes for BC Golf. What a weekend. This is outstanding stuff.
Terrific stuff from AJ. Remarkably consistent. He had rounds of 66, 67, 67, and 66 in the ultimate pressure cooker. Didn't blink. And yeah, he's the medalist. Gets a $50,000 check to sort of jumpstart.
Yep.
This isn't just getting his tour card. There was a little bit of dough involved as well, so that'll help.
The big money is here to come. He's playing the Sony Open in Hawaii in a couple of weeks.
He's in the big leagues now,
Yep.
maybe a little ahead of schedule. This is a guy that played on PGA Tour Americas and was here, there, and everywhere. Of course, the old PGA Tour Canada was folded into that. And
Vancouver Golf Tour, Fraser Mulholland.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to
Fantastic.
Fraser and all the development
Fraser
that he's done.
Mulholland, and he's just been a gift to the game of golf here in our community.
Yeah, great to see Adam Svensson, who had a disappointing year out on tour, but he gets a second chance here. The fallout of all this, though, is that Adam Hadwin, who has been a mainstay on the PGA Tour for a decade now, a winner at Valspar a bunch of years ago.
90 million in his career, he's won?
He's 90th all time.
Oh, sorry, 90th
on the PGA
all time.
Tour career earnings, which is probably top 100 with one tour victory. No, he's made $25 million over
25
the years,
mil.
so it's not a financial thing, but he doesn't have status anymore. He would have full-time status on the Corn Ferry Tour, but that's a step back in a big way, and we'll see. I know he's talked about he's not ready to pack it in, that he'll take his lumps and he'll grind it out on the minor league tour to try to get back to the PGA Tour. He might draw some PGA Tour starts based on being a winner, but it's just been a dreadful season for Adam Hadwin.
He still has some status that could get him into events, but they would tend to be the weaker field events when a lot of the top players aren't playing. He got it to -2 final score, but he did well to get it there. He was even further out of it earlier in the tournament. That's too bad. Wishing Adam well. Hope to see him back on tour. We had so many poll questions between Friday morning and
the kind
today.
of weekend it was.
We'll recap one of them. Did Zeev Williams' debut help numb the pain from the Hughes trade? 80% of you voted yes for the young man in his Canucks debut. I love these. They came in back-to-back. Howie says, not a chance. # sell the team. Lyle says, yeah, now send him down to Abbey so that this team can still tank. Yeah, don't think that's happening. 2 errors and omissions from yesterday's or from Friday's program and beyond to report. There was a typo on one of the poll questions on Friday. We asked you, do you like the return on Hughes? Yes, no, or still processing. Typo on still. And last week when I was discussing the value of Hughes and I made reference to that blockbuster trade between the Islanders and Montreal Canadiens on draft day, 2 first-round picks and Emil Heineman, the middle six winger, I mistakenly said the defenseman was Romanoff, not Noah Dobson. The Islanders and Habs had gotten together on a Romanoff trade previously, but this one was Noah Dobson. Thank you to Yerke, believe it or not.
Shocking
Yes.
that he caught you.
Thanks for joining. Does he catch Rink White as well? Oh, my gosh.
Nothing gets past Yerke.
Yeah, that's right. He is our editor par excellence. Thank you, everyone, for spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. Tomorrow we will be 10 a.m. with the early start at Madison Square Garden against JT Miller and the Rangers. So 10 a.m. tomorrow. JPat, thanks for sitting in the last couple of days. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. No, it's been fun. It's been busy.
Been here for a lot. Yep. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.